still?
Hey folks, Joe here. I'm going to announce my ready-made soon.
All right, let's start over. Good morning, my favorite carboholics. Henry Hunter with Henry's Bread Kitchen. And today we're here to do banana bread. Now, I know you've got your favorite banana bread recipe. Your mother has her favorite banana bread recipe, if it's not the same one. You've got one from Grandma. You've got a friend that brags about hers. If you go to YouTube, you'll see 200 different recipes right off the bat. The best banana bread, all of this together. Well, because banana bread is so ubiquitous, everybody's got their foot in it. So none of them are going to be the same. And if you find one that you like, that's all you can do. That's all you can do. I've got a couple of notes I want to make sure I cover on here. The interesting fact about banana bread is that it doesn't start with bananas. Back in the 1800s, bananas were still coming from Central America. But they were a perishable fruit, and they would spoil before they got here. They would rot, a lot of it would. So bananas were really scarce in the United States in the 1800s. Until late 1800s, early 1900s, early 20th century, refrigeration came about, which flooded the United States with bananas. And it was a big popular fruit, exotic. Nobody knew what it was. It was great for breakfasts. It was something that was used to augment cereals that you were feeding your kids. But no banana bread yet. And in 1933, we go into a Great Depression. And no food, no produce went to waste because everything was so rationed. Everything was so valuable. So if anything started to spoil, you had to find a use for it fast. And bananas were one of those things. So at the same time, and this is just another coincidence, a new chemical leavening agent had come to market. It was baking powder and baking soda, baking powder for the most part. And the company selling the baking powder really wanted to impress the people who were making the flour and mothers at home on how good their chemical leavening agent was, and the flour companies wanted to communicate how great their flour was. So they got together and started studying recipes. And the first banana bread recipe came out in 1933. And it was using bananas that had over-ripened, and they were able to put it in bread and get it leavened. Because, back then, banana bread was a very simple bread to make that tasted very good to your family. And it only had some simple ingredients. Some flour, some bananas, some fat, some sugar, something to sweeten it with, and maybe a pinch of salt, and you're good. And most people had those kinds of things laying around, even during the Great Depression. But it still wasn't very popular until Pillsbury comes out with their great banana bread recipe, and that exposed it to more and more people in America. The Pillsbury company did that. Well, still wasn't as big as it is now. And if you're old enough to remember the Chiquita Banana Company, with the woman with the stuff all over her head, it was great. The Chiquita Banana Company came out with a recipe book that pushed banana bread because they wanted, obviously, to sell more bananas. And that did it. Banana bread was everywhere, and you had chemical leavening agents that were available to the mass public, like baking powder and baking soda. And it didn't require what they were used to, which was a starter to make bread and hours to make bread. Let's just give you an example of what happens with what we went from to now. This is my sourdough starter. I gave this guy a feed this morning, and he is ready to bake with. This is Vitale sheep. It's an Italian name, means life giver. So we went from that to chemical leavening agents. And we've got an egg or two, so an egg is a leavening agent. That's another way to make the bread rise. So that's a little anecdotal trip down banana history. So what are we making today? we're making this. This I made for you last night, just so you could have something to see. It is my crunchy banana bread. Now, the thing about this is, you may find this is the best thing you've ever had. Or you may say, well, it's not as good as my grandmother's. But for all you beginners out there, there's a lot of you out there. You can't go wrong starting this way. And let's see, it's got really crunchy crunch on top and moist inside, like that, with nuts and goodness. All goodnesses are in here. Okay? I'm tempted to try that, but I'll wait with the rest of you. All right, so let's get started on ours. First thing we're going to do is make sure we have familiarized ourselves with the playbook. And the playbook in this case is your recipe. And we are going to make sure that we know what's expected of us and what we need to have. So let's get started with our ingredients. 1 1/2 cup, or 190 grams, of all-purpose flour, a cup or 200 grams of granulated sugar, a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt, then a 1/2 teaspoon or 120 milliliters of vegetable oil, 2 eggs, have them at room temperature, 1/4 cup or 60 milliliters of honey. I get special honey from guys that are local. This is from Blythewood Bee Company. They're right here in Blythewood, right outside Columbia. And this is the best honey I've ever had. Maybe it's because it's local, maybe because the owner, Scott, is a friend of mine. This is just great stuff. So we got our 60 milliliters of honey, 1 cup mashed ripe bananas. That's 2 to 3 medium-sized bananas. 1/4 cup, 60 milliliters of warm water, 1 cup of walnuts, pecans, raisins, craisins, whatever you want to put in there. So I've got my bananas, and here's what ripe bananas look like. You see that? You go to the store and you buy those green bananas that my grandmother used to call them raw bananas because they weren't done yet. Raw bananas. But this is how most of the world eats them, because we in America want everything really pretty. We have to buy the green ones until they turn yellow, and then we eat them, and still there's very little flavor. So take 3 of those. I did medium, and I'm going to use a potato masher, just like this, or you can use a fork just to get these mashed up. Now the slimy stuff is the best stuff, so don't cut don't try to make it pretty. You're making it out of old, for us, bananas. See how mushy? That's what we want. Let's put that in there. Now let's get started with some of our ingredients. How about let's do our wet ingredients first. We're going to put our wet ingredients into our dry ingredients. If you don't have one already, you need a kitchen scale. If you're serious about wanting to learn how to bake or baking at all, or you may need it around the kitchen for other things, but one of your best investments is a scale. I've said it 1,000 times, so let's move on. All right, so let's do our dry ingredients, our wet ingredients. We've got 2 large eggs. I'm going to take these, put those right in there, and then I never got my whisk out. I'm going to whisk these up a little bit. I want all of those different aspects of the egg to get incorporated. And I want a little frothy top. I'm going to add my sugar next. How much sugar do we have here? Teaspoon of kosher salt, milliliter of that. Wet ingredients. I'm not going to add the sugar to this quite yet. I'm going to do vegetable oil. Now, this is the same as a stick of butter. So we've got 1/2 cup or 120 milliliters of vegetable oil. Or you can use a stick of butter, melted. Goes right in here. I am on something of a diet, not my choice, but I realize I need it. So that goes in. And now, let's pour the honey directly. I don't want to pour the honey into something else and then have to leave some of that behind. And then, so I'm going to risk it and go straight into here with 60 grams or 60 milliliters of honey. Grams and milliliters are the same at this low volume, this low measurement. This stuff comes out in a hurry, so you got to stop it way early. Oh, look at that. 60. Now you know good doggone well I would be eating that if it wasn't if y'all weren't sitting here watching me. That's 60 grams or milliliters. Let's get that incorporated a little bit because otherwise it'll sit on the bottom. We don't want that. We're now going to add our 60 milliliters, or how much is this? 1/4 of a cup of warm water. 60 milliliters. Get some more water going in there. So make sure I've got my vegetable oil, I've got the eggs, I've got my honey, I've got my mashed ripe bananas ready to go. I'm going to be using 2 different whisks today. This is a normal traditional whisk that you're mostly familiar with. And this is a Dutch whisk or Danish whisk. It's for bread, and it is a miracle in the kitchen. It works for everything when you're mixing. So you'll find a link for this in the bottom. At the bottom, you want one. Let's put these bananas in and get those incorporated. You'll see how this comes in handy here in a second. All right. Now, that's our wet ingredients. Our dry ingredients, we've got 1/2 cup or 190 grams of all-purpose flour, which is right here. And I use King Arthur bread flour. Then 200 grams. Take your Lipitor, your blood pressure medicine, whatever else you need to be able to eat this bread. It's got a lot of sugar in it. So there's your sugar, granulated white. And then our other ingredients, a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, a teaspoon of baking soda, and a 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. I have those ingredients mixed out and measured out right here. So those all go in. And my dough whisk. Get all of that mixed in. You don't want clumps of cinnamon or uh, salt or anything else to form in your final dough. So that's why you mix all of your dry ingredients together first, and then you mix your wet ingredients together separate, and then you combine everything. Put that right there. That's for you, Scott. You haven't tried that. You have to. So now I've got all my dry ingredients together. Am I missing anything? I don't believe so. I've got all my wet ingredients together. And then I have nuts to go in here. So let's put our dry on top of our wet. And just mix this in. Now here's a time where you're going to add your walnuts or any other kind of nut just after I've got it just, introduced to the flour. Let's decide on adding a few walnuts. Now the trick here is you can get a Ziploc bag and pour some of your walnuts in a Ziploc bag and get your rolling pin out and take out some aggression. You don't want to do your whole bag that way. And it's your banana bread. So as much or as little walnuts as you want. And I'm not going by that. I'm going by what I have left and how I'm going to use it. So, it calls for about a cup. If you want a cup of walnuts in here, put them in here. That's all I need. And then now, just fold that in using your whisk or your spatula. This just presents less surface area, so it goes through the batter or the dough a lot faster. Okay, you don't want to overwork it. You just want to make sure that every bit of the flour has been introduced to the liquid, so that you don't have any dry flour left. It's another reason I use a white or a clear bowl for this, so I have some idea that it's all mixed properly. Now I've got a secret weapon that I use. And I'm going to tell you what it is, as long as you don't share it with anybody. This is pure vanilla extract. It's this new thing. Just kidding. And I'm going to put about an eighth of a teaspoon, maybe a little bit more, about an eighth of a teaspoon in, maybe a little bit more, maybe about a fourth. And then get that worked in. You'll find recipes out there for banana bread that has nuts, that has nutmeg in it. That's a really nice one for the holidays. Okay, that's all mixed. That's all we got to do. Our oven is preheated to 375. And now for the pan. We're going to use a 9 by 5 inch loaf pan. Okay? And you're going to oil it with that extra butter that's in the recipe. Or you can use a spray or any kind of nonstick spray will work here. But I take a piece of parchment paper and fold it in half and sit it in the bottom like this. Because, I've been doing bread a long time. And I cannot guarantee that it won't stick unless you've got a piece of parchment paper in there. If it sticks, you got to mess up the bottom. So I've learned long and hard that I'd rather be safe than sorry. And this is what we're going to do. So Start in the middle and fill her up. Take your time. This whisk is pretty good at getting everything out of your bowl. Just a piece of baking equipment I like. I mean, it's not necessary to have all this baking stuff. You know, I've been around it a while, so I have a lot of it. But if you ask me to come down to about one or two things that I would hold on to, it's my scale, it's my stand mixer, probably that dough whisk, or what I'm excited about having. All right, now let's get started with the toppings. For the topping, we're going to use 1/4 cup or 55 grams of brown sugar. Now, go ahead and just put your 55 grams of brown sugar in here. And then 2 tablespoons of granulated white sugar in here. I think that's enough sugar so far? I don't think. And then a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. And then I mix a few nuts into this mixture. And before I mix the nuts in, I just want to make sure I go in here with my hands, because brown sugar has, like me, has a tendency to clump up if it gets moist. So you want to make sure there's none of that clumping going on. And sometimes brown sugar has other, really hard pieces in it. And you don't want to have that on your bread either. So just go through, make sure none of that's happening. And then now, let's get liberal with our topping. It's going to seem like a lot. And it is. But it's what we need. Banana bread is not it's not an artisan bread, as but who cares? It's bread. Let's eat. Voila. That is it. That's how we do that. So we went up 55 members this week. Where are you guys coming from? Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. 55. And so we had our biggest contributor was Debbie Anderson. I love you. You know we do. And the top video on our YouTube page right now is how to freeze your bread and thaw your bread. So we're going to do a little giveaway because we're at 500 somehow subscribers on YouTube, and we need 555. So we're asking you to go there, watch that video on how to freeze and thaw your bread, like and subscribe, and we're going to do a giveaway next week. We've given away so far a scale and a really nice bread knife and a dough scraper, stainless steel. So let me go and see what I can dig up this week to give it away. But you need you to go to our YouTube page and check out that video and like and subscribe. Comment on what you'd like to see us do in the bread kitchen, okay? And we'll know you've been there. So now this goes into our oven at 375 degrees for 50 minutes to an hour. Now, if every single body's oven's different. Mine is a little on the low side until I get really hot, like up about 510 degrees, and I can count on it. But put this in, check it at 50 minutes. And if you notice the top is starting to get a little too brown for you, then turn it down to about, 350. You might even want to tin it with some aluminum foil. But you can be at 350 to start with. At 375 is what I do of most of my banana breads. Now that I think about it, I think we'd be best served by doing this one at 350. just because we've got all this sugar on top, it's going to caramelize and it's going to get dark quick. And we don't want it to get dark faster than the inside becomes solidified. So right around 350 at 50 minutes, check it with a toothpick or something else, a straw, something narrow, um, a thermometer in the center. And if it's not sticking to it, if you can pull it out and there's no sticky stuff on it, it's done. But if it's still got sticky stuff in there, back in the oven for a few minutes, and then you're checking it every 5 minutes after that. All right, so let's put this guy in. And come back to this. I have a counter full of sugar. So what we do with in our group, for those of you who are new, we make bread together, and we need to see your bread when you're done because that's what makes the whole thing fun. And that's some people are really shy about sharing their stuff. I'm not. I'm not. I don't know you except for being right here. We're family in here, so show us your bread, and then that gives us an opportunity to say, you know what, doggone it, I can do that. Or, God, good Lord, I don't want to do that. But show your bread so we can understand with each other what we're doing and what our talents are. We've got some very talented people in this group. So here's what this banana bread looks like. Look at that. Nice and moist with nuts, cinnamon. Where's my coffee? That's what I need. Anyway, that's going to bake for an hour. You guys post your pictures when you're done. And let's go from there. If there are things that you'd like to see us bake, put it in the comment section. If you have any questions about anything we've done today or anything that we're ever doing, just message me or put it in the comment section. Rachel's great at making this all work smoothly for us. Welcome all new members, and thank you all guys for being here. This is Henry with Henry's Bread Kitchen, and we're out.